Following the discovery of gold in Johannesburg in 1886, South Africa became the largest producer of gold in the world. For more than a century, they produced 50% of the world's gold supply, relying on cheap labor and rapid advances in mining technology to keep producing hundreds of metric tons of gold a year, keeping that top spot until 2010 when they were finally surpassed by China and Australia. The majority of South Africa's gold reserves are located in Witwatersrand Basin, an area that comprises 35,000 square kilometers, or about 17,600 square miles. In some areas, geological shifts pushed the gold ore close to the surface, but in other places, the ore veins stretched down to 4 kilometers, or 2.5 miles underground, giving birth to some of the world's deepest gold mines in an attempt to access these rich ore veins. Political upheaval, economic shifts, labor disputes, the depletion of ore veins, and the astronomical costs of running a gold mine have forced some mining conglomerates into liquidation, resulting in them abandoning their mining sites before they could be properly rehabilitated. And today, we're going to have a look at how those abandoned mines have allowed the illegal mining industry to flourish, and how the people who live near these mines now fear for their lives. Now, historically, South Africa's mining industry depended heavily on cheap migrant labor, which mostly consisted of black South Africans who moved to Johannesburg in the early 1900s looking for a chance to offer their families a better life. A century later, the illegal mining industry mostly consists of poor black South Africans and undocumented immigrants who explain that they have no other choice but to go down in the mines and perform back-breaking labor in an attempt to provide for their families. They are colloquially known as Zama Zamas. The Zama Zamas compare their jobs to gambling, explaining that the only difference is that the odds are usually in their favor, and yet life down in the mines is absolutely fraught with danger. They spend up to 5 days underground and have to carry all of their tools and supplies with them. Their only light sources are the headlamps that they carry, and the temperatures down in the shafts can range from 23 to 40 degrees Celsius. The shafts are filled with dust and are unventilated. There are open pit shafts that are hundreds of meters deep, and it's not uncommon for a tunnel to collapse without warning. One miner explains that he once got lost in the mine after he ran out of batteries, and he was trapped for 3 days before some of the other miners found him. And those are not the only hazards they face. One Zama Zama from Zimbabwe explained that he and a group of others were once held hostage for 4 days by a group of armed men from Lesotho. They were forced to mine on behalf of these men, and all of the ore they mined for themselves was confiscated before they were allowed to leave the mine. Because of these violent groups, many Zama Zama mining teams employ armed men who agree to guard their backs in return for a portion of the gold that they mine. The Zama Zamas eat, sleep, and socialize while down in the mines, work in teams to process the rocks they've mined, and once their packs are filled with rich ores, they make their way up to the surface and then spend days breaking and grinding down the rocks, washing the resulting sand, sifting through the sediment, and smelting the gold dust they find, hoping to at least find a few grams worth of gold. Now, of course, they can't legally sell these gold nuggets, so they have to sell their gold to a broker, resulting in them earning only a fraction of what the gold is worth, usually between $25 and $35 a gram, when the market price per gram in February 2024 was close to $65. Some Zama Zamas report that if they're lucky, they make up to $1,500 within 2 weeks, more than they'd be able to earn in a year if they had a minimum wage job. That money is then used to buy supplies, support themselves and their families, and used to bribe police officials who patrol the area and turn a blind eye to their activities. But, as one of these miners explained, he only worked in the abandoned mines because he wasn't able to find work anywhere else. He has a wife and a daughter who depend on him, and despite the risks, despite the danger, he doesn't have another way to provide for his family. His only wish is that the police and the South African government would realize the amount of blood and sweat that goes into his job, and that they'd leave him alone. But there's more to the illegal mining industry than a father's simple and honorable wish to provide for his family, and it's endangering the lives of the people who make a living above ground. You see, one Zama Zama explained that where there is gold, there is going to be blood, and in the last year, the truth of his words have become oh so apparent. According to the news agency Times Live, 2 Zama Zama groups from Lesotho, collectively called Tarina, have in recent years become the largest organized crime group in South Africa. These groups lay claim to abandoned mines, demand money from the Zama Zamas working there in exchange for a protection fee, and habitually harass these groups. In recent years, they've even infiltrated mining companies and still working gold mines, sabotaging their operations and stealing large amounts of processed gold from these mines. The money they make from selling their stolen gold then goes to the leaders and is used to lobby for favors from the politicians in Lesotho. On the 30th of July 2022, these two groups drew national attention when a group of 8 models was attacked by a group of armed Zama Zamas on an abandoned mining site outside of Krugersdorp, Gauteng. The models had been shooting a music video when they were attacked, and 5 of them were sexually assaulted by the group of men. 14 Zama Zamas were arrested in connection with the attack, but the sexual assault charges against them were later dropped. To date, nothing has yet been done to find justice for these women. In July 2023, residents in Rivoli, a suburb in the south of Johannesburg, reported that a turf war had broken out between 2 factions of the Terena. These 2 armed groups were armed with AK-47s and had taken their battles to the streets of Rivoli, resulting in the deaths of at least 5 Zama Zamas and 1 resident, and leaving 20 others injured. The residents of Rivoli then called the Minister of Police and the South African National Defence Force for assistance, but reported that the help they'd received was minimal, and as a result, the community barricaded off their streets at the beginning of August in an effort to protect their homes. Some even dragged Zama Zamas out of their homes and presented them to the police, demanding that they arrest them. In an effort to please the community, the Minister of Police sent a task force team to seal the nearby mining shafts and arrest as many of the Zama Zamas as they could find, but their ploy fell flat when the Zama Zamas voluntarily left their holes in droves and told the police that they were also being victimized by the Terena and that they demanded justice. After this, the turf war seemingly came to an end, but in a video circulated on social media, one of the Zama Zamas involved explained that it was a simple matter of one group ridding itself of a rival group that had threatened to take over their territory. Now that the other group had been dealt with, they were free to carry on as usual. Since then, the sealed mining shafts have been reopened, and residents of Rivoli report that they can still see the Zama Zamas walking around freely in the area. Once again, the police are doing nothing to put an end to their activities. But if they don't take action soon, there might be disastrous consequences. There are estimated to be 40 to 75,000 Zama Zamas working within the Witwatersrand Basin, and they are having a noticeable impact on not only the local economies of the communities they live in, but also the environment and infrastructure surrounding their mining sites. Dozens of stolen cattle are slaughtered every day, and their hooves and hides are cooked and prepared as delicacies. Others supply the Zama Zamas with snacks, cold drinks, and other necessities, and hundreds of cooking fires fueled by old tires burn throughout the day. Illegal water and electricity connections provide power to the informal settlements where the Zama Zamas live, which is costing the city millions of rand in lost revenue every year. When the abandoned mines they work in run dry or become too dangerous to work in, the Zama Zamas dig their own tunnels, allegedly using dynamite smuggled in from Zimbabwe to create makeshift mining shafts. Exploratory tunnels are then dug, and these tunnels range from just 4 meters to 100 meters underground. These tunnels will usually wind underneath houses and roadways, often intercepting gas, power, sewage, and water lines. These lines are then cut off or blocked, leaving hundreds of households without water or power for weeks on end until the city can figure out where the fault lies and repair it. One Zama Zama explains that the old mining companies left rock columns in the mine shafts to keep them from collapsing, but since these columns are also rich in gold, the Zama Zamas packed wooden supports and sandbags next to the columns before they mine them out as well. This, of course, significantly weakens the labyrinths of old mining tunnels that run underneath central Johannesburg streets. Since many geologists have explained that Johannesburg is essentially built on a honeycomb, some experts fear that these illegal mining activities could endanger a significant portion of the city and its infrastructure, specifically around Bramfontein, Hillbrow, Marshalltown, Selby, and the M2. And this could result in the creation of multiple sinkholes that would make the area unlivable. And their fears are not unfounded. 108 earthquakes have been reported in the area in the last decade alone, averaging at least 10 earthquakes a year, which measure a magnitude of 3.5 on average. 95% of these caused by mining activities, and seeing how the most profitable gold mines are all located on a fault line, it's entirely possible that one good shake could bring the oldest parts of the city tumbling down like a house of cards. But can it be prevented? Although politicians have been actively lobbying against the threats that illegal mining poses since at least 2016, there are more factors at play here than a group of armed men who have laid claim to an abandoned mining site. Skyrocketing unemployment rates and poverty will drive more and more people into the abandoned mine shafts. As long as there is a market for the gold that they mine, and as long as corrupt police officials are willing to look the other way, the problem is only going to get worse. The authorities can only prepare for the inevitable and hope that when the world does come tumbling down around them, there won't be too many lives lost.